So,
No, that seems to be the hardest 4 letters in the English language.
it is. Okay, thank you, ladies. And if you would introduce yourselves before you speak, and you have 3 minutes apiece. Thank you.
I'm Angela Aliff from the People LLC. In 2014, in response to the course choice program, accessing and using and sharing students' social security numbers, the legislature then set out to pass the strongest student data privacy law in the nation, which is in existence now and which Representative McKnight's bill seeks to undo. Karen and I have a unique perspective because we actually co-drafted that bill, and it passed the legislature through all committees and both chambers unanimously. So the intent of the legislation is very important, as you know, and we are here to speak to that intent as the legislative intent, since we were involved in all discussions, and only that which we approved got in the bill, and only that which we approved came out of the bill. So clearly, we were in line with the legislature's intent. This bill, under the color of state law, for the purpose of accessing, which hasn't been discussed, the funds that will be available through the America Competes Act, seeks to make legal that which is clearly illegal in our state. Parental or guardian or student consent does not change this fact. It doesn't help your cause if passing this is what you're determined to do. Because the law states that it is a crime in our state for any official of the public school system to require the collection of Social Security numbers. The legislature felt strongly about that, and the governor signed it. This bill doesn't eliminate that intent of the legislature. It simply wants us to ignore it because that remains in the law while Section N is added to the end of the law. So the law states, notwithstanding any legislation to the contrary, student Social Security numbers are not to be required to be collected by any official, and that comes with criminal penalties. Section N says shall and requires officials to require the collection of this information that's personal and private, and that students have a right to the privacy of.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, you want to introduce yourself?
My name's Karen Champagne. I'm also with the People LLC. Concerned about why we're going through the student data privacy law to get information about individuals that is not student data. We're getting workforce information. You're trying to get information about individuals after they leave school. Yet you're trying to go through the schools to do it. I don't even see how it's germane to student data. But yet here we are, because you want to get the Social Security numbers through the schools, which we and the legislature protected. I mean, you protected that information because the Department of Education shared Social Security numbers without parental knowledge, without permission. That's why, that was one of the main reasons why we did the student data privacy law. And parents everywhere need to know that their students, it's requirement that they go to school. They need to know that their students' data is safe there. And, you're trying to say that it's voluntary. Well, let me tell you something. We passed this bill in 2014, and we have been This bill has been attacked every year since then. They're whittling away at the protections that were afforded in the very beginning. So when you say it's voluntary, this year it's voluntary. Will it be voluntary next year? What about the year after that? What about 10 years from now? It's you're putting the frog in the water and you're turning it on. And as a citizen, we do not want to be tracked. We don't want our children tracked. We don't want a system set up where it's even possible to track citizens. Have you asked yourself, how did they know where the Jews were? How did the Nazis know where they were to go get them? They were tracking them through the pushcart system that IBM created. Do we really want to set this up? Protect our right to privacy and protect our children. Thank you.
Thank you. I was here in 2014, and I was a proponent of that, everything that you're talking about. Me and several other individuals, and I remember it clearly. And I can you can bet that we have run the traps on this with everybody, including the author, I believe, of the original bill. So I am concerned as you are, but I do have a comfort level that this information is going to be, just as they said, kept quiet. And I'll tell you another thing, and I did make it, and I expressed it earlier. Right now, they're supposed to be moving some of this information around, and we're trying to resolve that. So I can't probably alleviate your fears, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And what about next year and the next year? Well, I can assure you, if I'm in the legislature, we'll make sure that nothing, at least I will try, that will make you have this concern. So I feel like this bill stays within the purview of what we tried to do in 2014, or I wouldn't be for it.
But so, Representative Harris, it doesn't get around the fact that the law still exists, even with this section in, that states, notwithstanding anything else to the contrary, student social security numbers cannot be required to be collected by a public school official, period. So I don't know how this bill jives with that.
Thank you. And that's part of the legislative process, and I'm going to check into that. But thank y'all so much for your time. And I do have a question from Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question to you would be, you keep saying required. If a parent says, yes, I want to offer this information so that educational opportunities are broadened or improved for my child, why shouldn't a parent be able to give that information or allow that information to be given?
Well, you're not even talking about a child anymore. You're talking about a person of the age of majority. So how are you going to switch from parental consent to that majority's consent? How are you going to do that? If the child is 17 at the time when you get the consent, what are you going to do? Chase them after graduation? And say,
I don't think you can answer my
because
question,
your
but
parents consented.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right. The witness table is to answer questions, ma'am. So, all right.
I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Parents do have the ability to voluntarily disclose this information. That's in the law now. Parents have the ability to voluntarily, that's in the current law, the Student Data Privacy Law as it exists prior to this amendment to it. Parents can voluntarily, obviously, I think we're still in America, so parents can voluntarily disclose information if they choose to. What is not okay is for a public school official to require that Social Security numbers be collected. And that's not changing with this law, with this bill.
Thank you. Representative Phelps?
And I just wanted to say I understand what you were saying with the testimony from the previous years. And you brought up a point that I'm concerned about as well. if it's school information, they're not a student anymore. But this is the information that's used. Mr. Chairman, could I ask LW, the Workforce Commission, a question related to?
Sure. I mean, you got about 2 minutes and 30 seconds
Hey,
left.
while Ms. Taylor's coming to the table, could you quickly explain the difference between collecting the data and what is used for reporting? Because I'm thinking, yes, you're using my Social Security number, but how are you going to report it?
So the data is reported back not with a Social Security number. The data is reported back with a student identification number only. We
Okay.
don't even give the Social Security number back to a school system.
Okay, so the Social Security number, when we say needed, is this
It's needed only for the match. We do not report it out at all.
so the outside company matches it, or Workforce
We don't give it
Commission?
back to them either.
Okay, so you are doing the work there. Okay, that's a sense of security. And is this information still not available when I go apply for a job and I have this training that I received in high school and I'm saying this on my application? I'm giving my Social Security number. Is this not this? Can that not be used to
The
see?
certificate can be given to an employer as proof of completion of the certificate, but it is not tracked by an employer.
We can't
No-
use it that way.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Phelps, that was a very good point. Thank you so much. Representative Amity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the guests from LLC.
LWC?
No, these ladies. I'm sorry, We the People. I couldn't quite get your name right. Anyway, I wanted to ask, if Social Security numbers were taken out of the bill altogether, do you have any other issues with the bill?
I mean, as a taxpayer, an employer that's required to report into tax databases, it concerns me when we're going to decide to use taxpayer databases where this information is required to be collected from the citizens of the state for any other purpose than just the paying and reporting of taxes. Those databases should be held to a higher standard than any other database by our state, because citizens are required to report into them. Employers are required to report into them. And when we do, we trust that that information is going to be safe. So once you start opening up these databases for other purposes, it opens up the possibility for hacking, for nefarious purposes or uses of these databases. And it's just something that, as a citizen, I want to be able to trust that that database isn't going to be touched for anything else except for the reporting and collecting of taxes.
And also for, in the law now, as it stands, there is the ability to use aggregate data and the whole purpose of that was, according to the various departments and Workforce Commission, was so that programs could be evaluated. Federal programs, state programs, all the programs could be evaluated using aggregate data. But now we're talking about tracking American citizens from the time they're in school into the workforce. And we're going to say that it's for program evaluation when we already have the ability to evaluate programs.
Okay, thank you, ladies. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, for your
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
testimony, and appreciate you very much. Okay, the board is clear. I do want to say that we had those 2 red cards. We have 2 white cards. Not wishing to speak to give information. Renita Ward Williams of Louisiana Workforce Commission she spoke. But Kelly Taylor White spoke, and she's with the LWC. We have, other than the 2 green cards that spoke, we have Ethan Melanson of Bessie that's in support, David Zoller of BRAC in support, Terrence Lock